Hey everybody, how you all doing? It is August 1st. Finally, we are here in August, and guess what? Things have not changed. What are they still pushing? They are pushing fear. Now, I've done 2 reports on the hurricane, the so-called hurricane Isaias. Okay, now when I was watching it on all their forecast models, that's all that really we could go off of, right? Well, now we're starting to see where it hit through the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, and for the last, probably 12 hours, I have been looking at just the radars, just wind reports. And I'm sorry to say, but I don't see a hurricane here. Okay, I mean, look at this fear that they're pushing right here, Isaias, next stop, Florida, and it's going to hit the whole East Coast. Which, yes, I've reported that, yes, this storm will move up the entire East Coast. But that's one thing. Yes, that's the path. But if you're going to continue to push this is a hurricane and that it's going to continue to be a hurricane, and you're talking about, evacuations, and, you have FEMA coming out and doing a report on, which I'll play here on Fox, and you'll just listen to the fear that they play, okay? But before I get into that, let's just look at some of these wind speeds, right? This is from yesterday, okay? I have not refreshed this page yet. Now look at Friday, 6 a.m. This is right in the center of this storm, okay? And the thing is with a hurricane, it is not wind gust. It has to have sustained winds of 74 plus miles per hour to be a hurricane. Sustained. I cannot find them. I have looked through Windy, I have looked through Null School, I've looked through pretty much all of them, okay? Look at this. 48 mile per hour winds. Now watch, I'll play it up, I'll get up a little more. It gets up to, I think the highest I could get, look at 60, 61, 63. And they are calling this a Cat 1 hurricane. At this time, when this was done, this is yesterday at 9 p.m., they said that this was a Cat 1 hurricane with sustained winds of 80 miles an hour. Then this morning, about 5 or 6 a.m., it was 85, then it was back down to 80, and now they actually just did the report at 2 o'clock, dropping it to 75. But there is no hurricane here. Is there a circulation, a storm that's going to get rain and wind? Yes, but this is not anything to be screaming panic like they are across all of the networks. Okay? I mean, this is just, watch this. I mean, we'll go up here into Nassau. Watch. Let's just click on Nassau. Nassau is in dead center of this, on the top right corner, which is pretty much where you are going to get your strongest winds. Now look at sustained winds. Everybody, look at that. The highest we get is 42. The gusts never even reach 70 miles an hour. So we truly need to watch out for this misinformation. I am more worried about how they are pushing this. It's called the COVID cane. Yes, that is what they are calling this over and over again, the COVID cane. And they are doing all these reports about how bad CV is going and how bad it is in these areas and how nobody's paying attention and they don't even know a hurricane's coming. And it's just one thing after another where they're just telling you how you're not smart enough to be paying attention and you should be listening to us.
And this is the first real test of the state's coronavirus hurricane plans. The Weather Channel's Dave Malkoff is in Miami, a COVID hotspot, to see how the city's dealing with the double threat.
This banyan tree-lined campus is home to the largest nursing home facility in the state of Florida. There are 339 residents here at Miami Jewish Health and 1,200 people to care for them all, including Chief Medical Director Dr. Sean Corbett.
We anticipated that we'd be dealing with COVID-19 during hurricane season, and we've done our best to prepare for the combination of those two. And here we are.
Around Florida, there are 70,000 people in nursing homes right now as Hurricane Isaias moves in. The 700 facilities like this in the Sunshine State are all required to have generators to run life support as well as air conditioning. For a storm like this, the plan is to keep people in their rooms where the beds are now 6 feet apart, and COVID-positive patients are in an isolation wing. They do have a shelter to use as a last resort right here.
And that would be a relatively catastrophic event for us to have to do that. But our Ruby Auditorium is rated up to, I believe, a Category 4 storm if necessary, which clearly we're not anticipating this time around. But we would do that, and we would socially distance individuals in there just as we would anywhere else.
Normally, they could let the public in the shelter as well, but not during this pandemic.
Like this. Let's listen to the FEMA administrator.
It's not the feared surge. There would be some surge, obviously, but not worrisome enough to have people abandon areas. Is that still where we stand?
Well, first, heed your local, county, state emergency managers. They know best, so I'm not going to get into their business. But what I will say generally is, don't bet your life on what the forecast, the track, the intensity will do. Today is the day to make those final preparations so you're ready no matter what happens. And so if I can ask everyone out there in Florida, especially those along the track of the storm, is take preparedness actions today. Make yourself, your family, your business safer today so you won't regret it tomorrow.
You know, we've seen a lot of flooding in Puerto Rico and some of the outward islands. Is that what these folks are in store for at a very least? I mean, a lot of flooding. I think in Puerto Rico, overnight they had better than 5 inches of rain. What are you seeing thus far?
Well, again, the forecast changes. I think the National Hurricane Center has confidence in the forecast today, although it will change because it's just a forecast, it's a prediction. So if it stays on its predicted path, Florida will likely get more rain. They may have some surge, tropical storm force winds inland. So again, just because the track is offshore doesn't mean you're safe. So again, don't bet your safety on what the hurricane will or will not do. Take some action today to protect yourself and your family.
You know, Administrator, a lot of folks are very nervous about leaving their homes or going into these shelters, especially with the coronavirus, which is pretty pronounced in Florida right now and in South Carolina as well, if it were to continue up the coast. So obviously they have to be aware of distancing issues that could make it problematic, and you go from the frying pan into the fire. How is that addressed?
And so, great point, Neil. Early on in our COVID-19 response, back in late February, early March, we knew we'd be here in hurricane season, and we wanted to prepare not only the federal government but our partners at the state, local tribes and territories to make sure that they look at their existing plans, pre-COVID plans about things like evacuation and sheltering, with the overlay of COVID-19 challenges. So you're exactly right. Locals and states will need more time if you have to give an evacuation order. You'll need more transportation assets. You'll need more square footage if you decide to put people into congregate settings. You may need to put people that are at risk in non-congregate, so things like hotels and dormitories. So all those actions, locals and states and tribes and territories are doing today. They're looking at those plans and they're adapting those plans to this storm and any storm that comes after.
Circulation probably around there, based on some of the other data I'm looking at, likely the satellite pictures. Have a look at this. So with the center of circulation right there, you might be thinking, wait a minute, where did the thunderstorms go? Well, they're over here. And weakening, yeah, this thing has completely been exposed now. We can see the low-level center from space, and there it is with no...
It's been exposed. Exactly. We've exposed you. You have to use your space data to even show us where this so-called hurricane is at. People, we need to continue to always pay attention to these kind of things. There is not a hurricane there. Is there a storm? Of course there's a storm, but it's the same thing that they do over and over again. Right now with CV, this is how they pump up the fear, and they are going to continue to use this to herd you in the directions they want to put you in. With all of these shelters, you have to do X, Y, and Z, or you can't even get into them. You gotta wear a mask, you gotta do this. If you have a fever, you have to go here. If you actually test positive, you have to go to a dormitory. I mean, this is just crazy. People need to pay attention themselves. Go outside and watch and pay attention. Don't just sit here and watch your phone or your computer or even listen to me. Go outside. Talk to people. Talk to your family, your friends that are in different areas. That is how you need to figure this kind of stuff out. Yes, you can prepare, but please do not fear. And yes, this storm looks like it could go all the way up the East Coast, but this seems more like a dry test run to me. You have Josephine, which is next on the list, which, that name stood out to me. I definitely thought they could use a name like that, to bring some disaster, saying it's biblical. And, we just need to continue to watch. But this one just definitely seems like a test to me. It seems like they're running everything else. Okay, they're going to set up all the shelters. They're going to do all this stuff on TV. This storm's going to run up the coast, but it's not going to be nothing severe. And then, I hope to God I'm wrong, but then here comes a Cat 4 or a Cat 5 and does the same thing, later in the year. Okay, and this is just a dry run for it, or a soft run for it. So I just want to do this as fast as I could, because I just get so frustrated with hearing them push fear over and over and over again, and using CV19 in all of this. It's pathetic. That's more what they've talked about repeatedly over and over on here, is how so many people have this CV in this area. So with this hitting there, how bad it's going to be.
As we were talking about the pandemic, we've got a spiking pandemic number here in Florida, 480,000 positive cases so far. That number would possibly be a little bit higher, but as you know, on Thursday, they shut down a lot of the testing facilities because in all this wind, and as it gets worse and worse, you can't have the tents up and the cones and the nurses outside taking those tests. So they had to take down those whole facilities, not just shut them down, but actually take down the tests as well, Julie. It's a storm that is coming this way. We just don't know exactly what it's going to do because that kind of track is still up in the air. We ran into a lot of tourists who are still arriving here in South Florida. Some of them, and this may surprise you, are completely unaware of the very existence of this hurricane. Take a listen.
I didn't know at all.
We found out yesterday, yeah, from a Uber driver. She said there was going to be a hurricane. We should probably hit the beach before the hurricane.
The Uber driver had to tell you.
Yes.
These Georgia tourists aren't alone. We saw plenty of people checking in, eating at restaurants, both outside and inside, some with masks, some without, all as the Florida Department of Health added 8,983 positive coronavirus tests on Thursday. That was before the approaching hurricane forced many of those testing sites to shut down.
Well, we knew that Florida's cases are rising in corona, but we were thinking, why stay home when we have the same thing going on at home in Maryland, so why not come to the beach and enjoy it?
Have a vacation.
For reference, the Maryland Department of Health statewide number is around 88,000 positive tests. That is less than 20% of Florida's confirmed cases.
It's okay. We feel safe. We feel good. We feel like the hotel is provided everything that we need, and we have lots of Clorox wipes and Lysol and hand sanitizer.
Okay, we are going to stop right there because I ran the numbers on this. Yes, they want to say, that it's 88,000 in Maryland compared to, the 400 and whatever they just put up there. I ran the numbers, okay? For people that live in each state, okay, for Maryland, 88,000 of approximately 6.2 million people came out to a 1.4% of the population that is tested positive. I did the same exact thing with their numbers in Florida. It comes out to 2.3%. So you are talking that small of a difference between Maryland and Florida, yet they tell you right here, it's so much worse in Florida. You ever think maybe they have more cases because it's a bigger state? The way that they manipulate the numbers is pathetic. You have to pay attention because they will continue to mislead you.
Officials in Flagler County, Florida, urging residents in low-lying areas to be ready to go if limited evacuations are called tomorrow. The president has approved Florida's request for an emergency declaration. The states of Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia have issued emergency declarations. And one small hospital in Brevard County, Florida, has moved its COVID-19 patients ahead of the storm. So a lot of preparations underway. We want to get the very latest on Isaias, looking a bit more ragged, Carl Parker, than what we had been seeing earlier.
Yeah, Julie, it is remarkable when you look at the satellite presentation right now. It is not nearly what it's been. It never was incredibly well organized, but now, I mean, as you look at this thing, you don't have to be a trained meteorologist to look at this thing and go, wow, that doesn't look like an incredibly threatening storm, at least not right now. It is still an 80-mile-per-hour storm. It's important to remember that these storms have inertial stability, which is to say once they start spinning like that, they keep going even in the absence of thunderstorms, and it's going to have a lot of time out over the open water, and so it's got plenty of opportunity to get its act together and develop more thunderstorms about that center. So the forecast calling for a Category 1 hurricane to begin to brush the coast late tonight and through the overnight and then into tomorrow, and then start to curve around perhaps a little bit more out over the open water away from the coast where it's sort of indented near Georgia, and then coming up into the Carolinas beyond that.
Okay, one other thing really quick. Did you hear they said that one hospital's already moved their patients ahead of the storm? Do you see how they can use these forecasts to manipulate and move your family members or take your family members and put them in areas that maybe you can't get to them? That's how they use these storms, okay?
Yeah, Julie, it is remarkable when you look at the satellite presentation right now. It is not nearly what it's been. It never was incredibly well organized, but now, I mean, as you look at this thing, you don't have to be a trained meteorologist to look at this thing and go, wow, that doesn't look like an incredibly threatening storm, at least not right now. It is still an 80-mile-per-hour storm. It's important to remember that these storms have inertial stability, which is to say once they start spinning like that, they keep going even in the absence of thunderstorms, and it's going to have a lot of time out over the open water, and so it's got plenty of opportunity to get its act together and develop more thunderstorms about that center. So the forecast calling for a Category 1 hurricane to begin to brush the coast late tonight and through the overnight and then into tomorrow, and then start to curve around perhaps a little bit more out over the open water away from the coast where it's sort of indented near Georgia, and then coming up into the Carolinas beyond that.
See, so they have to actually tell you, oh, well, they have inertia, so even though, yes, it's looking like just, some normal thunderstorms, really no thunderstorms even anywhere near where they're saying, they're all off to the northeast. They said, oh, it has inertia, so it has time to go up over the water, and it could get some more water. It could invigorate the storm, and the storm could get its act together and really, strengthen up. And I love that. They keep asking is it going to get its act together? Well, do they want it to get its act together, or do they not want it to? Wouldn't you think you wouldn't want it to?
Is this thing going to be able to get its act together before it gets closer to the coast? Certainly it's got a lot of time over the open water, but it's got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, it sure does, Carl. We're having the same conversations here looking at this and getting the data from the aircraft. But no, it never really looked like your traditional storm on satellite. I mean, you can kind of see it here behind me. You can see the center coming off, the Andros Islands there. So it's always had this shear. It's always had this shear to deal with. It's had, the islands, battering the islands with rainfall and those winds, but at the same time, you add that little frictional component. It's had a lot against it the whole time. But the bottom line is, still large storm. We still have a ways to go. The rain bands, interesting enough, I was looking at the Miami radar, starting to see some of these rain bands come in. That could produce some tropical storm force winds. But will it get its act together? That's the conversation that we're having. But a big reminder, a difference between a hurricane and a tropical storm is 1 mile an hour. It's going to be still about this heavy rain. It's still going to be about the gusty winds as this center gets really close to the Florida coastline, and also some of those elevated tide levels.
And what do you think as far as those components, the wind shear and also the dry air that's been wrapping around the system, what is the forecast for those components over the next, say, 12 to 24 hours here?
Yeah, we're still looking at the model data and really trying to pay attention to all the aircraft data that we get from the drop zones. It's still going to have that hostile environment. So even if we get into the open ocean here, it's still going to have some of that shear to deal with, the dry air. And as we approach the coastline, you're going to have also the component of part of the coast. You're going to have part of the storm over the coast, part of the storm over the water. That can also be a factor in this storm. So, really it's one of these that we're going to be thinking about. The wind is only one of the parameters, but we're going to have to really watch for some of those rain bands and really kind of keep an eye on the coastal water as well.
It never really looked like your traditional storm. Do you understand how they give themselves ways to back out of all these forecasts? This is the continuing way that they do this, okay? Oh, it never really looked like a storm, yet we put a threat out to everyone just because we're trying to keep you prepared. Really? You had to do states of emergencies, you're doing setting up evacuations, FEMA's doing all their planning. You know, come on, right? This is just fear. Yes, there's a storm. Yes, it could literally run up the entire East Coast. But to me, I believe this is being overhyped dramatically. We just had a storm come through here that did devastating damage to, it came through, it was about 70 miles wide. That's how long the strip was when it came across northern Michigan, and we had thousands of trees down, tons of houses damaged, vehicles damaged. I mean, we had flooding everywhere. We had real destruction. It wasn't even talked about. It was barely even mentioned on the Weather Channel. But now they're going to put all this fear into you about a storm that didn't even have nowhere close to the winds of the one that came through here. There was reported 95 mile per hour winds in the storm that came through us. Okay? These aren't even nowhere near that yet. Real threats aren't usually talked about until it's after them, and the ones that they know that aren't going to be as bad, or even if they do turn out to be that bad, they're going to use them and scare everyone. But we're going to leave it there. This one priority ran too long, but I'm trying to get this information out there. Still prepare. Please do not think I'm not telling you to go prepare. Make sure you're always prepared. But you should be prepared ahead of these things. Because if not, then they have people running to the stores and selling out everything at Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart. And they get to make all their money. And then they just change their storm track. And then, now everybody in that area runs and goes and gets their supplies, paying extra money, etc., etc. Okay, you need to be prepared ahead of these things so that you do not get put in the situations that they are trying to put you in. I love you all. Continue to pray against all of this evil that's going on, including these storms right here. They want to blame it on Mother Nature. They want to blame it on God, but we know for sure they are manipulating. These are the ones, the evil ones on our world, controlling, manipulating, turning, strengthening, weakening all these storms. They're going to continue to do it, so continue to spread information. You have to share this. Talk to your family. Talk to your friends. We are making a difference. We'll talk to you all real soon. God bless.